All right, this is the very short meditation from this date, 13th day of June, originally written 10 years ago and read today on this Friday the 13th, which is also a full moon on my calendar, which is from northern New England. They're calling it a full strawberry moon, so I'm not quite sure what that means. But here we go. Check out the blog post for today, the commentary, which is taking up the whole question of what I call the hermeneutic field, and how that all is a kind of network of connections that are made when one sort of digs deep into, I guess what you could call the possible origins, but it's more than that. It's just sort of pursuing outwardly in any direction the possible traces of what I'm discussing here. So, anyway, the meditation from today. The intimacy revealed in the care for being is shown in the modality of devotion that expresses the love of learning and wisdom. To take up the path of philosophy, to follow the sage, is to be devoted to learning and to be devoted to the way of wisdom, the Tao, to the care of being, and thus to be released into openness. Here's an exchange from Heidegger's Conversations on a Country Path. Teacher, then releasement would not only be a path, but a movement. The scholar, where does this strange path go? Where does the movement proper to it rest? The teacher, where else but to that which regions, in relation to which relation is what it is. For in the regioning which we stay, everything is in the best order, only if it has been no one's doing. Scientist, a mysterious region where there is nothing for which to be answerable. Teacher, because it is the region of the word, which is answerable to itself alone. That's the end of the quotation. Heeding the guidance of the word, as Heraclitus has said, is to hear wisdom. And this painstaking listening is the initiative of the poetic that takes the learner along the path, through the open region, far from calculative propositions of correctness and incorrectness. In this region, authentic learning unfolds as the improvisational making of meaning, the give and take of dialogue, guided by the sage, who is most ready for the unforeseen. Quote from Lao Tzu, spontaneity, not planning, scheming, is the hallmark of the Taoist sage. Unquote. This give and take is the building of poetic dwelling, the releasement that is both the path and the movement, because the movement, the poetic dialogue, is the unfolding of the freedom of letting be, of hearing the other as other, and thus the manifestation of the peace cultivated in this gathering. As we have said, the essence of learning is freedom. We've arrived at this insight by identifying the modality of openness as the existent standing of the learner. We said, if existence is rooted in truth as freedom, then freedom designates the truth which is disclosed in and through philosophical wandering. Thus, the essence of learning is freedom. Here we further identify the existent movement of learning as the devotion to the Tao, as the care for being, the cultivation of the open region of openness. The movement along this path of wisdom is the very building of poetic dwelling. The community of peace and freedom is made and maintained in the movement along the path, a path that is broken with the movement of the community. The path and the community emerge together. Wisdom, like freedom and peace, is not an abstract and empty ideal, but a phenomenon that makes its appearance with the learning community. The intimacy is the nearness of the essential relationality of our existence and freedom of the open region of learning. Learners abide in the nearness of the other, the one with whom they are enjoined intersubjectively in the making of meaning. Learners abide together, enjoined by the ineffable. That gap, that is the openness, which simultaneously joins them together and separates them. The ineffable is thus the condition for the actuality of intersubjective dialogic gathering of learning. This is why we say the ineffable and the learning community emerge together. And that's how it ends this day, the 13th of June, originally written 10 years ago in 2004 and read today, 2014, on the only Friday the 13th that's also a full moon, and what my calendar is calling a strawberry full moon. So here in this meditation, further description of the way of learning and what is being cultivated or what is emerging along this way, and the space that this way is both opening up and constituting. So there's a very interesting relationship, right, between the space of the learning community, both how they're gathered or where they're gathered, and the space in between those who make up the community. So space has this multi-dimensional character to it, and it gets the name the ineffable because it is supposed to be this emptiness or this nothing space that's beyond language, and it's necessary in order for there to be any kind of dialogue, any kind of gathering that is learning. The space is what is not language. It's the other of language. It's not simply what's beyond language or not describable in language, which is the traditional way that we think of the ineffable, that which cannot be disclosed in language. In this case, it's really the absence of language. So it's the absence of language that then, like silence, makes possible the space for speaking and for dialogue and for making meaning and for the gathering, which is arranged through dialogue. So that's some commentary, and also please do look at the blog Duarte Being Learning and search for OPM120 and the blog post from this day, June the 13th, for some very more amplified commentary that goes into various different sort of presentations of more about how the writing was undertaken, and more commentary on the writing process and the writing itself. So it's not just commentary on what I just read, which is ultimately published in Chapter 8 of Being and Learning in the book, where this material is ultimately published, and this is from pages 200 and 201 in Being and Learning. So if you want to check out the book, also do that.